So the first thing, when we talk about the position of the left and how to, in a small peripheral country which is out of the Eurozone, but the Croatia, in a sense, it's the exchange rates are really rigidly fixed, and situation is even much more complicated than in Greece, because you have two currencies in the same territory. But from the perspective of the left, how to intervene into the debates, how to push some arguments like this one that we heard from Michel about wages, and other ones in contrast to dominant orthodox and mainstream economies, and also if we include the ideological coordinates in which in a country like Croatia the left should intervene. I think the first thing that we are lacking, in a sense, as a basis, is the proper explanation from the left perspective of the breakup of Yugoslavia in terms of its crisis in the 80s, and also the proper leftist explanation of the civil war that happened here. Not in sense of some intellectual triumph, but because now I think also in Serbia, but in Croatia especially, whenever you want to intervene in some kind of debates, you always have to intervene in this kind of framework of dominant, be it nationalist, be it liberal interpretations of the breakup of Yugoslavia and the path of the Croatian independence. And also, I think it's very important to relate this problem to the hegemonic fight over the explanations of the current crisis, because without this theoretical work, we are somehow not in a position to break up these really dominant narratives, be it, as I said, be it liberal or nationalist. So this was the first part of this ideological framework that we are now in. The second one is connected to the European Union as accession of Croatia to the European Union as a project that was now completed 3 months ago. Now this because during the 19th and the 2000s, the European Union in Croatia was treated not as a political issue or political problem, rather as some kind of metaphysical or religious one. We have to enter there because there's not any kind of alternative. There was no any kind of analysis of how Eurozone functions, about the economic situation in Europe. The Europe was somehow imagined as a Europe of the period of the golden age of capitalism. So it was completely wrong imagination, in social imaginations of how Europe functions, and how especially we, Croatian economy, will function or is already functioning in relation to the European economy, to the core economies of the Europe. So because one of the main, if we want to speak about the Croatian economy in last 20 years, of course we also have to go back to the 80s and the breakup of Yugoslavia and the position of Yugoslavia in the global division of labor, position of Yugoslavia in terms of global financial markets, its debt crisis and austerity measures. But in Croatia, there are two parts we could take of this road after the breakup of Yugoslavia, one in the 90s and the other one in 2000s. In the 90s, there was some kind of, they tried to build domestic bourgeoisie in a sense. Mostly it didn't work out till 1997-98 when the banking crisis occurred in Croatia, and then the government intervened, cleaned the banks, that is, cleaned its balance sheets. It was really, with public money, it was really expensive, and then sold it mostly to the Austrian and Italian banks. And that was the crucial. Now the percentage of foreign-owned banks in Croatia is 95%. And after that, the other parts, the industry was being completely devastated, or be it to the they were privatized mostly from the in the 90s by these so-called tycoons or the domestic bourgeoisie, and mostly the production was stopped, and they just sold the real estate, or sold the materials, machines, and stuff like that. And the only sector where the domestic bourgeoisie kept its presence, it's in construction industry and in the real estate. We'll come to that later in the part of the 2000s. Most of the profitable industrial sectors, which didn't need any kind of investment, were sold to foreign multinationals, like telecommunications and mostly trading. After the situation in the economy was stabilized, after the banks in 2000, and also it's important to, as I already said about the Croatian currency, it's almost fixed to euro, and it's part of this so-called stabilization program in 93, 94 that was established with the overvalued currency, and with basically what we call Washington Consensus program. The difference came in 2002, 2003, with a huge inflow of credit, especially credit to households, because it was needed to create the demand for foreign imports. Because of course all these things that I mentioned in economic terms about Croatian deindustrialization, privatization, that stuff also create a really high current account deficits and trade imbalances. It then said so between 2002, 3 and 2007 and 8, before the eruption of the crisis, it was a period of some kind of prosperity. GDP growth was something like 4 to 5%, but it was completely fueled by this credit inflows. There was no this kind of even any kind of this foreign direct investments. All these credits went to households to buy the products that was imported from the core countries, and also in mostly to the construction industry, and credits to mortgages, credits to buy the apartments. We can now see the effects of these policies now in Zagreb, capital of Croatia. You have 15,000 of apartments that are not sold, and now for last I think statistics says that in terms of credits, there are credits to the households. There are now 17% of so-called non-performing loans that people cannot meet their obligations concerning their credits. And so in this period, it seems everything somehow functioned, and when the crisis hit, everything collapsed. Because Croatia is, as I already mentioned, some indicators of it. Croatia is in this distinction that Austrian economist Joachim Becker made between two different development models, or models of accumulation in Eastern Europe. Croatian development model was really of financialized dependence, in the sense that it's completely dependent of core economies, because there are two kind of models. One in which this financialized dependence, in this group of these post-socialist countries, we can find all of these ex-Yugoslav countries except of Slovenia and Baltic countries. And the other group are these so-called Visegrad countries and Slovenia. They are, especially these Visegrad countries like Czech and Slovakia, are some connected to the German industry. With Poland is something situation is a bit different. There are also some connected, but they have a bigger internal market, greater domestic demand, and also they somehow managed to handle the crisis with the currency devaluation and even some fiscal expansionary mechanisms at the beginning. So Croatia is in this second development model. So Croatian, in terms of interpretation of this crisis in the mainstream, it goes like in every other European country. Is the public sector, is the state, which is the problem. People are lazy or not lazy, and something like that. But in terms, what is interesting in terms of analyzing this situation in Croatia and how is it ideologically articulated in the press or in this so-called experts discussion is mostly it's articulated between this relation between state and the market, which is put as really strong dichotomy. One thing we should know about the function of the state in Croatia, in the peripheral country, in terms of its political and economic function, is that in terms of how it's related to the to political parties, because of the most of the Croatian industry is either devastated or sold to the foreign owners. Domestic bourgeoisie is very small. It's really it's only we can find some traces in trade before in construction, in trade industry, and also something in food industry. And it was really interesting with their position before the referendum on Croatian accession to EU. They were completely silent before the referendum, and after it, they started to complain because they lose CEFTA. CEFTA was there for the Croatian industry. Domestic bourgeoisie was this space where they function, especially after the Hungary and Slovenia entered the EU and leave the CEFTA. Now you have this kind of initiatives for regional cooperation, which is the most funny. The most interesting one is this book. It was published a few months ago, called really simply 5 Entrepreneurs. And there was 2 entrepreneurs from Croatia, Tedeschi and Todoric, which are also their firms are also can be found on Serbian market, of course, and 3 others, one from Bosnia, one from Serbia, and one from I think from Slovenia, the former mayor of Ljubljana. And it's a very interesting book where you can find really, if you read it closely, what are they talking about regional, in terms of regional cooperation, and how are they afraid of, because they have to leave this CEFTA, and what strategies are there now? What strategies are they taking to fight in the competition, which they cannot win with a much stronger foreign capital? I go back to the question of the state, because most of the political forces do not situation is, as I said, economy is completely devastated. There is 20% of unemployment. The debt ratio to GDP is going up. So there is no possibility for the main political parties to articulate or any kind of new political program that goes beyond this usual austerity measures and neoliberal mantra that we hear in every country. So most of the ideological and theoretical explanation is now concerned with the state and its budget. But the problem with the state in the periphery, not just in periphery, but especially in Croatia, that it functions somehow as economic tool for the political parties to gain their position. In Croatia, there were two ways how the political parties, especially the Christian Democrats in the 90s and after it, how they managed to amortize the effects and the fragility of the labor market in the periphery. In the second part of the 90s, most of the war veterans were retired because the labor market could not absorb them. And in the other way, to somehow to give people any kind of material, to somehow to save them from the labor market, was this clientelistic way of hiring people who are members of sympathizers of the parties in the public sector. And these two processes were later explained as some kind of Balkan anomaly or some kind of just corruption and clientelism, but they were never put in relation with the labor market and the capitalism of the periphery being able to absorb those labor force. So this is one example how this relation between the state and the market functions, and how it is ideologically used to talk about the new privatization of the state as a lousy owner and all that stuff. Concerning the situation on the left in Croatia, as I already said, there's no left as a political force, as a social force that can play any relevant role in a public and political life yet. I hope so, but there are three, I think, for the left to enter the public debates, to enter the political realm. There are three problems that have to be solved. One is this one that I already mentioned at the beginning, that is connected to the ideological problem and to the legacy of the former Yugoslavia. The other one is one much more closer to the previous two presentations of how to articulate a positive economic program, and not just to talk about leftist political values in a sense. And the third plan is the third aspect, and it's crucial for these two to be articulated at all in the public space and to gain any kind of social relevance. It's how to build the left infrastructure, which is, there's no such thing as now in Croatia, and how to somehow organize this social reproduction of political labor power on the left. The first thing, this question of ideological problem and intervention in a public debate and the political life should be, as I mentioned before, start with this analysis of the situation of the breakup of Yugoslavia and the analysis of Croatian capitalism in the last 20 years, but also in this fight against the dominant interpretations of EU and our patent that direction. So that will be the first level. In Serbia is already also, I think that's important, but it's already started with Goran Music's book that you can find up there and pick it up. The second problem is this positive economic program on the periphery, because it's in this situation in Croatia, it's really hard to articulate the economic program for the Croatia in terms of its policies, because it would not how to say, it would not function as we want to imagine, because there is such thing things so-called pet dependency, because in Croatia we are now, as I said already, we are now completely dependent on, for example, 50% of the Croatian food consumption it's imported. So there are lots of these things that happen in the last 20 years that will be hard to imagine how to intervene with a coherent economic program in this situation. In some sense, we somehow are dependent in a political way, what will, not just in economic, but in political way, what will happen in Germany. Because also, as I think, even this any kind of Keynesian political program will probably not function in one peripheral state. These are two problems that left now have to consider in this theoretical sense, and the third one is this: how to build infrastructure and how to find a way which organizational models to follow. There's no recipes or blueprints. It will be very hard way. But I just want to accentuate that the problem of infrastructure and in cadres, the problem of economic programs, the problem of ideological field we are operating in are really correlated in a sense. You cannot have a coherent political a program, coherent in a political sense, not in a logical sense, if you do not have infrastructure and social forces behind that program. The program can be coherent in its epistemological or logical sense, but its political coherence, it's something completely different.